Hello, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
It's 4 p.m. PMT, and we can start now. I would want to welcome you all to today's session. My name is Richard Apa, and I bring to you greetings from Ghana. In today's session, we have Dr. Mohammed, from the UK. He's an architect by profession and have wealth of expertise in building information modeling. He has a Bachelor of Architecture from Abu Zaria University and a Masters of Architecture and Masters of Modern Building Design from Bath University and University of Lincoln, respectively. And he has a PhD from Loughborough University. I don't know if Dr. Ahmad is ready. I would welcome him and allow him to take over from this point. Dr. Ahmad, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so please, you can start from your presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Their microphones are off, so
okay, but they can all hear me.
Speak.
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, we can hear
okay,
you.
As Richard actually introduced me, thank you very much for that introduction. My name is Mohammed Ahmed, and actually I'm an architect by background, as I was introduced, and I have actually done research on building information modeling for about 9 years now. And I'm actually interested in doing whole life cycle modeling for building information modeling. And what I'll be taking you through today is BIM maturity. And I think this is quite a very interesting topic because there are some complexity in it, and there are some importance about it, which is that once you begin to progress, you have to know sort of like how well you're actually progressing. But there are a lot of terminologies that we'll have to dissect in order for everyone to kind of go along with us. So within this session, what I would actually do is, let me just go on full screen. I would first take you through a comment which I think made by Max Dupree, which he stated that we can't become what we need by remaining what we are. And to put this in context, is just to say that BIM is a change in working processes. So you cannot achieve productivity with efficiency while you're still doing what you're doing. So you need to adapt in order to change. So I've seen Dr. Said's video, and one of the things he mentioned was that BIM does not actually change everything, but there are some changes that actually have to be adopted. For example, you can't keep using ad hoc processes. You have to have standard protocols. So there are a lot of things that have to change, actually. So I think in order to actually achieve this, there has to be a change. So content-wise, what I would look at is I'll give a very brief introduction, and then we'll look at a couple of BIM assessment methods that actually exist. And then we'll look at BIM maturity and BIM capability, and then we'll look at some examples to actually see what it is. So first of all, when we look at BIM maturity, the first thing that comes to one's mind is this actually an assessment to actually find something? Well, yes, yeah. It could be that you might want to find something, but is that all? Or maybe, is this a sort of like a checklist that you have to check just to make sure that you've actually attained something, like an organizational protocol that you have to just check? Or Is it a rating, which you have to rate something to see how good or bad you're actually doing? Also, it might be it's a risk assessment, which you have to, avert any risk that might come to your company or organization. Furthermore, it could be that you do a maturity or an assessment because you want to plan. So the big question is it one of them? Well, I think it's all of them. You need to plan, you need to avert risk, you need to rate to see how good or bad you're actually doing. But in order to define this properly, I think there is a BIM assessment definition, which was made by the BIM dictionary. I don't know if you guys are aware of the BIM dictionary, but there is actually a BIM dictionary which actually defines certain BIM definitions they actually define it more in what they're actually doing and what they believe in, but at least it sort of gives you an idea of what you're trying to find. There are words that you can't find in the dictionary, so if you use the BIM dictionary, they would actually help you. But however, they define it more in their own understanding or in their own way of understanding. So for example, BIM Excellence, which is an organization that advocates of BIM, they define the BIM assessment as a series of questions which aim to establish the competency of individuals or the capability or maturity of an organization. So one of the things that I want you to take here is they put it as competency of an individual. This is them asking like what one single individual can actually do. Or they said it's the capability or maturity of an organization. So when you put these two things, they become a bit complex because you're looking at the competency of individuals and then you're looking at maturity. Well, what's the difference? Well, this is what I would like to take you through in the next phase. But before I get there, since we started with assessment, I would like to say, okay, well, if you're doing an assessment, there are actually about 3 key things that you should also understand. That you would have 3 points. You would have a current status, that's where you currently are. You would have the route, and then you would have a target. So what is interesting about this is you could have several routes that would actually take you to that target. Some might miss the target, some might get there. But what actually matters is that you actually get where you want to be. So there's no one route to actually getting where you need to be, okay? And also another thing to actually point out is that, just let me go back here. If you look at the target, you would see that we have one defined target, and then we have other targets in other places, which are a bit higher or a bit lower. So what this means is that you could have a target which is moving. So what does a moving target mean? It means, for example, an organization might have economical crisis. After having a plan, then they change the target and say, okay, maybe we want to do level 1 BIM, but in 2 years, we want to be doing level 2 BIM. So they find out that because of economical issues, they can't do it. So they backtrack and they say now they don't want level 2, they want level 1 within 2 years. They might be financially viable and say no, they don't want to wait till 2 years, they want to actually do it in 1 year after they've already started. So the target can change, okay? And also they could have a static target, which is they precisely know what they want to do. Within 1, 2, or 3 years, they want to be at level 1 or they want to be at level 2. So this is quite more defined. Okay. Now, another thing to also show after we've come out from there is you have an assessment of individuals and an assessment of an organization and an assessment of a market. So we'll look at one after the other and see what does it mean to have a BIM assessment of an individual. Well, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. Let's start with the advantages and see what it says. So first, you actually identify competency gaps to facilitate training sessions. What I mean here is that if I have 12 people working under my company, I can be able to assess them and see their capability. And then I would find out where they are actually doing good and where they actually need some help. And within this gap, I can specify training to fill in that specific gap. So it's not just an open training, just say, okay, I'll just training you in BIM. Well, you have to know where the staff is before you know, so that training is a bit tailored. So this is one of the advantages. Another advantage is aligning staff competency with the organizational roles. If I know the competency of people that work in my company, so if I have a project, I can pick up specific people that I can put within a specific role. For example, I have people who are competent in doing 4D and 5D, and I have a project which the client requested to do some 4D or 5Ds. So I can easily select people rather than selecting anyone from the big team. I can select a couple of people. Okay, also looking again, we have simplified requirements for new recruitment within an organization. What this means is if a company is going to recruit, so they would have an idea of what they want. You know, like the previous example I gave, let's say they had a project that required 4D or 5D, and they know they don't have it in the organization, so they can recruit a person who can do 4D or 5D. And the only reason why they're doing this is because they've already done an assessment of their individuals and know that they have what is missing. So in a nutshell, it gives you an idea of the gap that exists. Okay, now there's always two sides of the coin. Okay, now the bad side about this is that you need time to actually conduct this assessment. And you also might wonder who's going to pay for it. Because sometimes you imagine you have an organization that has 1,000 people, 500 people, you know, that there's time required, you know, and there's cost involved. So who's going to pay for it? And one of the biggest challenges of doing an assessment is the weak staff. They get to be flashlights. You get to point them out. So in some organizations, in some parts of the world, this is not a good culture. People would not do this because that means that you are showing the weakest link in an organization. So if they have any economical problems, you know exactly who to fire. They can take the list, look at the people on the bottom and just fire them because maybe they have little competency in what the organization is doing. So it has its challenges. Another challenge it has is, okay, now if people have fear about the assessment, they won't give you accurate information. So they will just put, you know, all good here, all good in here, and that's it. And then you pass the stage. So there are some issues about doing the individual assessment. Okay, now let's look at another assessment. Assessment for organizations. So organization sort of does this assessment to see how they can actually progress. But also we have to remember, even if you assess as an organization or assess as an individual, the people have to be somewhere. They have to be either part of a company. They can't be just individuals. But the whole notion is, you know, bringing the impact towards individuals and bringing the impact towards an organization. So this is the reason why we classified it into two. Not that you have an assessment for one single person and then assessment for that person within an organization. No, actually is people within an organization, but the impact on individuals and the impact towards the organization. So towards organization now, let's see what's the advantage to the company. Okay. One thing is that the company would understand their staff competency. They would know what their staff can actually do, so they know who they are. And also they will be able to identify their BIM readiness. They can know how ready are they regarding BIM. And also another thing is that, as we previously said, they would find out what the gaps are in their own roles. And if you don't know what the problem is, then you haven't solved the problem. If you know what the problem is, you've started solving the problem, even though you haven't done anything. So it's very good that an organization understands what the gaps are. Discovering unknown staff capability. This is another good thing. It could be that, you know, you have people that have good capabilities that you are not actually aware of. So doing this would help the organization actually unravel these capabilities. Okay, some challenges are that time is required for this assessment. And of course, if an organization is doing, they have to pay for it. So there's cost implications on this. And in some cases, you might have staff resistance. You know, staff might resist to doing these things and say, you know, maybe it has no use, or they don't want to do it, or whatever might happen. Or middle management might not want to do it because, you know, they might not want to approve for it, because usually when these things happen, what happens is that you get instructions from the top, you get middle management in the middle who take care of costs. They have to say what is the value of any money that goes out. So if they don't support this because they don't see value in it, then you might end up not actually doing it. So the resistance can get to the middle management, and then it might not actually happen. Okay, so now let's move forward. Okay, what about the methods that you actually use? So there are several BIM assessment methods that are used in organizations. There are some assessment methods that have been developed by researchers, some by industries. And also, these assessments have been developed from 2007. They've started to be developed in the construction industry. Sorry. Also, the assessment methods, they actually vary from country to country. So you could have different assessment methods in the US, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Germany, in Australia, and so on. And another thing to also understand is that you could have one single country with multiple assessment methods developed in the same country. Okay, so let's look at an example of. There's a research that a guy called Azuz Malik. He's currently did his PhD at Bath University. I met him there, and then he moved to Arab, where he's also developing a competency assessment tool for them there. So he actually did the research. He analyzed what actually exists. Okay, so he found that from 2007 to 2015, there are about 16 different assessment methods. And one of the first earliest ones is the ones by National Institute of Building Science, which is NIPS 2007. That was the first assessment method that was developed. And then further on, many people actually developed different assessment methods. We have some by BIM Excellency, the BIM Maturity Matrix by Bilal Suka. We have the BIM Quick Scan, the FICO BIM Score. And some of them from the UK, like for the CPI, CIC, they're all developed in the UK. And several others were actually also developed in the US. So now there are 16 that were developed from 2007 to 2015. So what about them? Okay, so within the 16 that were developed, if you look at this diagram, what you see in black is actually the ones that were developed by researchers. The ones that are actually not in black, they're actually the ones that's like industry-based assessment methods. And you could see the years that were developed, and you could see the categories involved. I don't know if you look at down under the STEPI diagram, if you look at the first one, which is the MBINs, it says something like there's 11 areas. The next one is 55, the next one is 8, the next one is 3. So under these, you can find how many criterias are put on each BIM assessment method. So some have little, some have more. Okay, so now a good thing to ask is, okay, what happens with these assessment methods? Like, okay, we have many been developed, some been developed by researchers, some been developed by industry. So now, what about it? Okay, so now there's two issues. There's an issue of simplicity and there's issue of complexity. Simplicity in the sense that maybe they have less questions. You can just open it and it's a 10, 9, or 11, 15 questions and you're done. Or maybe it's very complex because you have 25 categories or you have 15 different categories. So now if it's simple, is it better? If it's complex, is it better? Okay, my personal opinion is we have to look at both because they both have their advantages and disadvantages. If it's simple, that means you can do it frequently to see how things are actually going in your organization. So it's good to be simple. Also, the disadvantage of it being simple is that you know, it might not be comprehensive. So what the complexity does is that it covers a wide range of aspects. So if it covers a wide range of aspects, that means if you do the assessment, that means it's well done. If I may give this example, you know, it could be like a marriage. You know, if a marriage takes place and someone says, okay, let's assess this marriage, someone can say, I think the most difficult time in a marriage is the first year, because that's when you begin to know who is who. Someone might say, no. We have to take it comprehensively. We have to take it pre-marriage, early marriage, and post-marriage to see how it actually goes. So it could be true that, you know, the first year is the most difficult. It could be true that, no, when you spend 10 years in the marriage, that's when you actually know how far you can go because you're in it for life. So, you know, coming back to what we're doing, okay, so the complexity means sort of like, you know, it covers a wide range of aspects that should be considered in order to understand maturity. Okay, so now we'll begin to go a little bit. We've like seen a high level of items, so we'll begin to like simmer a bit down into some details. So there's BIM maturity and then there's BIM capability. Okay, so as previously we discussed about individual and organization. So BIM competency is what someone can actually do. BIM capability, let's look at if there's a definition, probably by the BIM dictionary. Okay, so BIM capability represents the minimum abilities of an organization or team to deliver measurable BIM outcomes. So it's minimum ability that someone can actually use to deliver some BIM outcomes. And it's a second phase. So after implementation, then you begin to go into your capability to see what your staff can actually deliver. So BIM capability is achieved or measured through well-defined revolutionary BIM stages separated by numerous revolution BIM steps. Okay, let's put the English away and see what it means. So basically it means that you should be able to measure certain aspects of the BIM process. So that's what the capability is. So being able to do something, your ability to do something which is measurable. Okay. Let's look at what does the maturity means. Okay, BIM maturity is not capability. Okay, so let's be clear on this. BIM maturity is not BIM capability. BIM maturity is the gradual and continual improvement in quality, reputation, predictability within available BIM capability. So it's not capability, but it is improvement, prediction, reputation of the BIM capability. So you can have questions later after on if this is not clear, but basically what happens is you take the capability and see how you can improve that capability. One of the best examples that is given in this context about BIM capability and BIM maturity is that you look at two organizations, given 6 months to go and do something. Organization A takes that 6 months, go and do flashy BIM project outputs. They deliver in 4D, 5D, 6D, give cost estimates and everything. They deliver it well and the project is successful, the client is happy, and then they come back. Okay, you're gonna do a maturity assessment. Okay, now B here. What B does, they take 6 months. They don't deliver a high-class project, but what they actually do is that they deliver a project which is repetitive. That means they have a protocol, they have a process which allows them to produce quality. It's just like an industry that makes shoes or something. Instead of making one good shoe, they make a line which collects each part and assembles it, and the output has the same quality with all the products that will be produced in that aspect. So it's just like a line. That's what maturity is. It makes sure that you get repetition. Predictability means that you know what you're going to expect, the quality you're going to expect at the end of the day. So that means there's quality, there's repetition, there's predictability. So if some clients, what they want, they ask people how mature they are so that they know that they would get this quality, not just what they're capable of doing. So I really hope that BIM capability or maturity is clear so that we can move on. If you have any questions after on, you can fire them out. Okay, just a second. I think I might just have to stop annotations. Okay. One thing that I want to actually also say is that regarding BIM maturity, as I previously said, you could do an assessment based on a target or a moving target. The same thing happens for BIM maturity assessments. You can also do it within a moving target or a defined target, which you know precisely what you want. You don't want it to change. Okay, so I brought this picture back again, and the reason why I brought this picture back is to say, okay, now 16 different assessment methods have been shown. So we will take one and sort of like go through and see what is actually inside it. So we'll see what Bilal Suka has done. He's one of my favorites. If you look at the numbers on the categories that each one has, you would realize that he has the most comprehensive assessment, which he has about 8 categories, but they have 5 different models. So this was at 2010. So he continued to develop this up to about 2016. So there has been massive development. So it moved from about 3 categories to lots of, I think they could be even in almost hundreds. But I would not bog you down into too much of that detail, but I'll just give you an overview of what is very comprehensive. So I'll give you, so the BIM maturity sample, okay, we can look at what they actually did. So first of all, the assessment that they have the assessment in the context of micro, meso, and macro. Meso means you're doing it for individuals or a small organization. Meso means maybe you're targeting a team. And the macro is in the context of an entire market, which I think the BIM Africa initiative should actually do this, so that you can identify what each country in Africa is actually doing, what the market in each country is doing. So there are lots of criteria that you can, it's actually already been done in Europe, in America, in selected countries. They actually show how the market is being going, like which country is doing, well, it's not competition, But the whole idea is to show how different countries are doing. And what to learn from this is that you can find the countries that are actually doing well in certain categories, maybe not in all of them, and then you can go there and see what they're actually doing and sort of like learn from them. Okay, so what's take away from this picture is that there are about 3 different maturity assessments that you can do: macro, meso, and then the macro, which is at a market scale or a sector or industry or something in that category. Okay, so Bilal Suka developed this in collaboration with Mohammed Qasim, who is an associate professor at Northumbria University in the UK. So they started working together on this, I think, for about 6 or 7 years. So they developed 5 different models. So I would not go into too much details, but I'll make sure that you have something to understand from each model. Sorry, I have some cold. So model 1, they assess diffusion areas. When they say diffusion, okay, I'll break it down a bit later. Okay, they have diffusion areas, and also they have diffusion dynamics. We'll see what that means. And also there's policy actions. And the 5th one is diffusion responsibility. So let's look at one after the other and see what does these assessment methods mean. So first of all, model A, which is the BIM diffusion. What the BIM diffusion does, it actually looks at 3 categories in 2 different aspects. So if you look at the vertical, you would see that they have the BIM stages and the BIM levels. Sorry, let me just show you this page. Okay, so policy, the processes, the technology. The BIM stages are actually modeling, collaboration, and integration. So if I can just bring you back here, so that means if you can look vertical, you have the modeling, collaboration, and integration. So modeling means anything that you actually model, you know, design altering, anything that you sort of do. But then it looks at how are you modeling in the context of technology. So, you know, they merge the BIM fields, which is technology, process, and policy, and the BIM levels, which are modeling, collaboration, and integration. So modeling is normal modeling. So they see what technologies are using, what processes are using, and what policies are using. You go to the next stage. The next stage is in the context of collaboration. In the context of collaboration, what technologies are you using, what processes are you using, what policy are you using? So modeling is just like modeling by yourself. Collaboration is like, okay, you do the modeling, but you collaborate with other people. In the context of integration, it looks at where you actually work with network systems, where you actually work internationally with other people. So it looks at what technologies you use in the processes and the policies. So now if you do this assessment, it looks like this. So it might be that in regards to what we have here, stage 1. Stage 1 is modeling and on the technology. So you could see you have 81. So that's the lowest part. So that means regarding technology and modeling, they could be using Revit or, you know, ArchiCAD or Vico or whatever software they're actually using. So maybe they are already progressing in this area. And then in each of all of these areas, they would put a certain percentage on how much they're doing. And there are criteria for you to actually select each of these percentages, but I don't want to go into that detail. So I'm just giving you overviews. So this is the first model, this is the output. When you assess, you have something like this. So you can assess different countries or different organizations to actually find out this sort of framework. So you can put them together and see which one is doing quite better. Okay, model B. Model B is called actually the components, the maturity components. So it has 8 categories, which is, it has objective stages and sort of milestones. So the objectives actually tell what you're trying to do, and the milestones that you have defined things that you need to achieve. BIM champions and drivers are like what is actually driving you to establish BIM champions, that you have people like, maybe building smart, or, you have who are actually championing the BIM within a country or within an organization or whatever context it is. So if you look at this 8 criteria, if you were going to do this at the macro level, you wouldn't have to choose all of them. You might just choose maybe just 3 of them to see how good you do. Maybe 3 of them, like champions, learn and education, and technology infrastructure, to see how much good you're doing in this. Okay, regulatory framework, to see is there any regulations in terms of how people are actually working regarding BIM, like nationally, organization, or in a small SME. Noteworthy publications. Okay, this is the reason why I didn't put it in red, because this is at a higher level. So if you're looking at noteworthy publications, is like, let's say Ghana, Zimbabwe, Morocco, South Africa, what reports are they doing? So the number of these reports would give them a certain percentage. So this is why I said you could actually do this to see how other countries are doing compared to others, so that we can sort of, peg someone, and then people try to follow up on what they're actually doing, and even get the reports and see what they actually have, to see how we can go with it. Learning and education, this is basically if it's at an organizational level, if you have trainings and all of that. Education means if you have universities who are actually offering BIM courses and all of that. Of assessment methods that you develop from country or organizations. Standardized part, this could be objects that are being standardized at organizational level, country level, whatever it is. Technology infrastructure is basically it's software, hardware, and networking systems that you have. Okay, so what happens if it's at a high level? It will be all the 8. So what happens is, if you look into this, you would see that, if you could see inside the diagram, we have A, B, C, D, E. So what this means, for each one of these categories, you have to select, is it at A level, or B level, or C level, or D level, or E level? So what are these A, B, C, D, E levels? Okay, let's look at what they are. It's also defined in the BIM dictionary as a metric to measure BIM maturity of organizations, project teams, and markets. What it does is like A is a BIM maturity that is low, maybe it's ad hoc. B is BIM maturity that is medium low, and then you have medium, and then you have medium high, and then you have high. Okay, in order to understand this, I'll give you a very, very basic example. These are the 5, which you do something ad hoc, you do something defined, you do something managed, integrated, and so on. So I will just return you back. So this means that when you take an object, stages, and milestones, they should be categorized in those 5 levels. If you take champions and drivers, they should be categorized in those 5 aspects as well. But they already have a table, a rubric that actually breaks down everything. So all you have to do is just read the rubric and see which one you fall into, and just highlight it. And then at the end of the day, you would have something like this. This is like a map. Each one, like you see A to E, so each one, you can color each one you have. So you would have a sort of like color within this target. So you would see how you're actually doing, where you're doing good and where you're not doing good. But where you need to be is in the middle, where you have optimized. Okay, but I think it will be good that I give you an example so that you understand these 5 stages. Okay, in order to understand it, I'll take an example of teaching. I mean training, okay? Because everyone is used to training, so I think it will be a good example. So when we take training, what does an ad hoc training means? It could be just like I just open my computer and I just called, hey, Daniel, hey, Mark, you know, can you come over here? I can just show you something. And then you just show people and run. You know, that's ad hoc. You know, if you do this kind of training, yes, you train, but it's ad hoc. So if this is what you do in your organization, then, you know, you would probably have a 1 for doing this. Okay. Let's say you have a training which is defined, you know, you have plans on how you do it, you have manuals, you have written requirements. You know, they call it the defined training, which is the medium low. Okay, that's 2. Okay, what about the medium? Okay, the medium is such a way that is offered with a system of management, profile. You already have trainers. You didn't just define the training. You already have trainers and you have profiles. You know who's who. You know what each person needs to be trained on. So you have profiles, you have trainers, you have timings. So it's not only definition. You don't only just define them. You moved 1 step ahead to organize it. So then you're at a managed stage. Okay. When we look at integrated means, the easiest example I can give you is, okay, let's say Moses joined our company today. Immediately he comes, looking at his CV, I can just say, okay, Moses need to take training B of category C and training B of category A. So I know what he has and I know what he needs. So immediately he comes in, I can fuse him somewhere. So that means we are integrated. We can integrate someone immediately he gets there because we already have established systems which collects, you know, input and just get you running once you get there. So that means you're at an integrated level. Okay, optimize is, you know, it's a certain level where you have continuous progression within an organization. It's like when you already know, you already define, you already integrate people, and then you continue to progress. You don't stop in one place. You know, you continue striving to get better and better and better. Probably using new technology, so you keep trying to progress. So when you're at this level, then you're at an optimized level. Okay. Before we finish B, so I'll just show you what it means. It means if you can see the map on your right-hand side, if there was teaching somewhere there, so you could say maybe you are at B, if you can highlight C, say you're at medium or C. So at the end, you would have all the 8 aspects with you highlighting 1. So I just give you 1 example, but you can do this for the whole 8 categories. But you don't have to say what you just read and know where you are. Okay, now let's move to the next aspect. As I can see, we don't have a lot of time. Okay, model C. What model C does is a diffusion. Kind of a diffusion do you have of implementation in your country or in an organization or in the market? Okay, we have top down, bottom up, and we have bottom middle. From the top is management doing it. From the bottom is staff actually pushing it up. Middle out means middle management understanding the value, and then they actually, you know, trying to push it up or down. So also, if you look at the pressure types, it could be that, okay, even though you might doing it up or down or however you're doing it, how are you actually achieving this? So they called it in 3 things. There's caution, there's normative, there's mimetic. Are you just mimicking what people are doing? Like, let's say we're mimicking what US is doing or somewhere else, or are we just doing it at a normal process where people from underground are just developing up? Or is it coercive where you force people to do it? So at the end, you would just select which category you are. You look at the right, you can identify which ones you're actually done. So policy actions. When it comes to policy action, what it does actually, it talks about policy makers. So what policymakers are actually doing is like sort of saying, okay, do you have policymakers who communicate, engage, or they just monitor? You have three categories. It's either they just communicate with people, or it's either they engage with people, or they monitor what actually happens. They monitor in what aspect? They could be passive, active, or assertive. Passive in communication means they just make you aware. Let's say I'll just take one so we can save time. So for example, if you take communication, if you're passive, you just make people aware, and that's it. You just tell people, okay, there's BIM. And the next step is if you educate people, that's you've been active. And the next one is assertive, like, so you prescribe something. You say, okay, everyone in this company has to at least read this or has to have a certain training. So at the end of the day, this is what would happen. You would have something like this where you would actually highlight, you monitor or encourage or whatever you are. So at the end, you have something to show the output of what you've done, which is also this if you force people or you control people or whatever you do. So this is sort of an output. Okay, E, which is the last one, is a BIM diffusion responsibility, which means people involved in actually trying to do this. So 9 people should be involved when you're trying to achieve this. And the most important ones are 7, 8, and 9. 7 is the people who deal with policy and processes. These are people who actually should understand the process and be policy makers. And then we have people 8, technology and process. So it could be the Revit users, the people who actually use Revit as opposed to be in between technology and process. And then you have people at 9 who are technology advocates. They're people who actually sort of understands the entire process. So they could be like building smart. So they're technology advocates. Okay, so we went through all the 5 aspects, which you could choose one. So the performance wheel, this is how it looks like. You would be able to, first of all, to understand the scope of what you're actually trying to do. So you understand what the problem is and where you are. So you understand your vision, your hierarchy, your timeline, what you want to achieve. Your next step is to establish current abilities to see what you have in your organization. You assess, and then you analyze. You analyze the results of what you have. And then you'll be able to develop a report on what you have in your organization. And then you plan. You say, okay, my organization is at level 1 here, level 2 there, level 1 here, level 2 here. So these are the gaps that we need to complete. And the 5th one is you then train or standardize or purchase or develop or track or do whatever you have to do in order to close up that gap. And the next is to measure how you're actually progressing with this. So it looks something like this. If you look at what you have on the left-hand side, it's the requirements. Let's say, okay, I already know what I need in my organization. So what I have here is the requirements. What I have on the right-hand side is the capability of some of my staff. So now if I wanted to align, I can take what is on the left, which is a requirement, and then map it to what I have on the right. So the red ones are maybe where, they need some training. So if I can't map it, then I need to train I can take the least most efficient person and then train him to get along. If I have someone who is very poor overall, I wouldn't even put him there. So I'd rather take someone who's closely aligned to these requirements and then put them up there. If they need slight training, then we can sort of like subtly train them and see how well they're doing. So in summary, what is the best assessment? They have some key questions that people might want to answer. What is the best assessment method? Well, it varies. It depends. There's no best assessment method. There are simplified ones and there are so many other ones. Who should pay for the assessment? It depends. It could be the organization. It could be the client. It depends. It would vary. What is the best way to encourage people to adopt BIM across a country? You shouldn't develop your own standards. So, summary, there's a difference between capability and maturity. Improvement is required. Several assessment methods exist, and they should be clearly defined, and staff should be involved in this process. So I would like to close it by saying, okay, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. So basically, you know, people should not tend to work alone. They should collaborate in order to actually achieve this. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. So over to you, Richard.
Hello. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for the presentation. It's now time for questions. So if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand and we are going to let you in and ask your question. Any questions? Okay, so I will start. I have a question.
Okay.
Last week, we learned about BIM maturity level 0, level 1, level 2, and level 3. So we're talking about BIM maturity this evening. I was thinking we could find it here too. But instead, we talked about BIM maturity indexed. And you said it has 5 distinct BIM maturities. My question is, are there 0, 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, if you look at the work of Suka, you would find a lot of this maturity levels. Reason why we didn't stick with one is because I told you there are several assessment methods that actually exist. If looking for the maturity levels from 0 to 1, 3, those maturity levels are actually used to assess a specific aspect. If you look at what was done here is you have variable assessment, you know, criteria that are used to assess different items. So each one has its own criteria. And if you want, you can email me. I can send you a link to those specific maturities from 0 to 1 to 3,
Okay.
which there also exist. I can email them to you if you want them.
Okay. So any other questions? So relate. Okay, we have Hanifa. Hanifa, you can unmute your microphone and ask your question. Hanifa. Hanifa, you can, okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You spoke about BIM competence, BIM capability, and maturity earlier in the class. So is there any, how am I going to put it? Is there any similarities? Like, is there a simple thing within the three? Between the three, the competence, capability, and the maturity, or you can use them at a different stage of what you do?
Well, actually, your question, yes, there are some like complex things about it, but it's all one line. What actually happens is competency is what is actually being done, how competently it's been done. Capability is what you can actually offer. And the other one, which is the maturity, is how good you can repeatedly keep doing it. So they are all in one line, but one goes after the other. So does it make sense?
Yes, it does. I thought they can work in the same category. One comes before the other.
Yeah. So you first of all,
right?
you have your sort of like your capability, and then that capability can mature on how good you're actually doing that. So it's one stream that keeps on. They're not like not working on the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
No. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other question? Okay, so before we go on to the next question, I would like to announce that we are going to have a session with Auto next Friday. So an email will be sent to you in that effect. We are going to have a session on Friday with Autodesk. So an email will be sent to you in that effect. So you can raise your hand if you have a question. We have Mohammed. Mohammed, you can unmute your microphone.
Hi. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How to choosing the best method of assessment? According to we having some assessment near to each other with simplicity.
Okay, so as I did at the closing statement, you know, as I said, you know, there are two sides of the coin. You know, in order for you to choose, to be honest, is a bit difficult because there are people who would rather not take a very complex assessment method. They'll rather take something a bit simple. So this is why some organizations like Arab are currently developing their own assessment, even though some exist outside, because maybe they think it's complex or something. If you take something simple, it might not cover everything. If you take something complex, people might not answer all the questions. So to be honest, there is no research that has been done that has shown which one is the best. I haven't seen any research. So it's just better you just pick which one you feel more comfortable using. And I think all of them are accepted because they're all published in reviewed papers in industry, and I think they're accepted. Most of the 15 or 16 ones, they're all accepted. So you can use any one of them, but I haven't seen any research that says this is the best, to be honest. Okay.
Mohammed, are you okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Okay, any other question? So our Friday session is not going to replace the normal Saturday session. So we are going to have a session by Autodesk on Friday, and the normal session will be on Saturday. You can ask your question if you have any. We still have some few minutes. So if you have any question, you can lift your hand, we will let you answer.
Yeah, if anyone has a question, even later on, you're free to email me and I would try and respond to you at a different time if you don't have it now.
Okay, so please, you can put, I don't know if you can type your email so that those who have questions later on can send you an email.
Yeah, I can. You have my email anyway.
No
you can
problem.
share it with them, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems that we don't have, there are no other questions. So if we have 3 minutes. You can also send your questions to info@bimafrica.org. We are going to send Doc's email address to you later on. So I repeat the announcement again. We are going to have a session by Autodesk on Friday, and this is not going to replace our normal Saturday sessions. So let's take note. We are going to send you emails to that effect. Okay, so we want to thank, we have in our midst Dr. Ahmad, and also we have Dr. Said Corey with us. Dr. Said, if you are, can you give us a wave? Dr. Said. Hello, Dr. Said. Okay. So, yes, thank you very much, Dr. Said. So if you don't have any other questions, we will thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And we also thank Dr. Ahmad, for having time for us this evening. Okay, so this is the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for having me all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
See you next Friday.
Yeah, okay. Take care.
Okay.